start today with a question. What is my favourite CD transport or CD player of the last 3 years? So it's not the shit Erd, and it's not the Cambridge Audio Evo CD, and it's not even the TEAC VRDS 701. Why not? Well, because each of those models uses a slide out drawer to load and unload the CD, and long-term use has shown me that those drawers, they're flimsy, and sometimes I think that a falling CD case would knock them out for good. Okay, so what has been the best CD transport or CD player for me? Well, that's the Shanling ET3. Why is that? Well, because it's a top loader, and also because it features I2S, AES and USB outputs, an AirPlay network streamer, and an upsampling engine, which I think is very cool. So now we ask, where do I go from here?
This episode is brought to you by AudioQuest. The cable company believes great audio performance begins with great power. Visit audioquest.com for more information.
In early 2025, I began my search for a more luxurious, top-loading CD player or transport. And in case you don't know, a CD player has a DAC built in and has analog outputs on the back, and a CD transport has no DAC inside and has only digital outputs on the back panel. So the Shanling ET3 is a CD transport, not a CD player. Now, being a top loader, the half-width Shanling had already primed me to work around its need for top shelf placement. For me, it's no different from a turntable, so loading and unloading a CD from a top loader feels closer to the vinyl experience than any slot loader or drawer. Now, when I started looking at higher end models, the Griffin Ethos had my attention for around 5 minutes because its flip up lid and puck had me excited about, I guess, the intersection of industrial art and technology. But the $40,000 asking price put my enthusiasm back in the drawer. So instead, I lowered my aim to land on a brand new model, the Michi Q5 from Rotel. And its top-loading CD mechanism lights up from within when the puck is lifted, just like the Griffin. But unlike the Griffin, the Rotel retails for $1 under $7,000 US. Now that's still expensive, yes, but is it competitive? So today we're going to find out with some side-by-side comparisons of gear I have in the house right now and music you might read about in Hifi News and Mojo magazine. So the Michi Q5 CD mechanism is a custom job. And talking of Hifi News, let me read to you what they said about it. They said, the laser, motors and the code written for the servo decoder board are all specific to this model. I'm reading this because Hifi News know more about this than I do. And they also said, the linear tracking laser is fitted to a CNC machined alloy plate suspended from a U-shaped steel frame. The complete assembly weighing in at 1.7 kilos. And it was these in-house customizations that delayed the release of the Q5 from last autumn to this spring. And there's no doubt about it, the Michi Q5 is a centerpiece product. Thankfully, an €80 IKEA bag boda has sufficient width and depth to accommodate the Q5's generous proportions, and the bag boda's cross-brace top shelf doesn't sag under the Q5's 24 kilogram weight. I mean, yeah, this CD player is a beefcake. And there are 3 reasons I think why the Q5 is so heavy. Firstly, it has a 4mm thick extruded aluminium top plate. Secondly, the inner chassis is made from steel. And thirdly, there are 2 custom wound toroidal transformers inside. Now, one of those transformers feeds the digital circuitry and the other transformer feeds the analog circuitry. And according to Rotel, this reduces noise and interference between the 2. And Rotel also told me that the CD drive's motor voltage and current supplies are electrically isolated from the sensitive audio signals. But the star of this show has to be the puck. It weighs a monstrous 1.1 kilograms. So drop it on your foot and you'll spend the afternoon in the emergency room, but lower it carefully into the Q5's cavity and you'll be rewarded with a satisfying thonk. Just make sure you stop the CD before lifting that puck out again, because it really doesn't like that. And we stop the CD using the on-device controls that are tucked away on the right underside of the front panel. Now, the labels for those controls are, I think, hard to read, and I reckon that Rotel could improve this if they ever make a version 2. And whilst I'm in niggle mode, the casework is finished in the same material favoured by Auralic for its streaming products. And that means one stray finger leads to white smudges that take a microfiber cloth to remove. You've really got to be diligent about keeping this thing clean. But hang on a sec. There's no dedicated stop button on the remote control, which had me confused for a while. Apparently what we have to do is long press the play pause button. Now the remote, I've got it over here, is a slender remote control, and it's more solid and hefty than I expected actually. It's really nice. It's better than average, I think, for products, because a lot of products still come, even like the Marantz comes with a fairly standard plastic remote control. I'm talking about the Marantz Model 10 that you can see over this shoulder. Now Rotel calls the Michi Q5 a transport and DAC, and we'll get to why in a moment, but we are told that the DAC circuit is fully balanced and fully differential. It's apparently built around an ESS Labs 9028 Pro chip, and the Toslink and coaxial outputs on the back panel allow us to sidestep that DAC to use the Michi as a CD transport. But I'm not sure you'd want to do that unless you were feeding something truly exceptional like the Mola Tambaki or the Grimm MU2, because these are the only 2 units in this house right now that are a clear step up in terms of sound quality from the sound of the Rotel. But as always with DACs, it's not this destroys that, because that is just absurd. But the Q5 sound is bold, it's dynamic, it's vivid, and it's present. So bolder, more dynamic, more vivid, and more present than the Eversolo DMP-A10 used as an external DAC. And that's what I heard when comparing the Rotel's balanced XLR analog outputs to the Eversolos, each connected to that Marantz Model 10. So yeah, that was a side-by-side comparison. And when listening to System 7's Live Transmissions Volume 2, the Rotel really ramps up the fun factor. The Q5 for me really turns music into a thrill ride. And if you're a sort of Diana Krall kind of listener, you might still prefer the Eversolo. But when I listen to McCluskey's post-punk, I want it to grab me by the lapels, which the Rotel absolutely does. Now that doesn't mean the Q5 can't do refinement, it absolutely can. And its soundstage is wider and taller than the Eversolos when tasked with Mark Pritchard's and Tom York's tall tales. But we should acknowledge here that the DMP-A10 is a fully featured streaming DAC and analog preamplifier with parametric EQ and room correction. And the Rotel is none of these things. So a more likely use case for owners of both the Rotel and the Eversolo would be to route one of the DMP-A10's digital outputs into one of the Michi Q5's digital inputs. Now on the back of the Q5 we find input sockets for Toslink, coaxial and USB. But thinking on that for a moment actually, you could save some coin here and go with the more affordable DMP-A8 or even the A6. Or you could do as I did and use a FiiO R7 or R9. Now the R7 and the R9 are what's called Roon ready. So this means they can receive streams from a Roon server. So my Roon server runs on a Grimm MU2, but you could use any Mac or PC to do that. Now Roon ready devices show what's going on with the stream, so the bit depth and the sample rate, and if the hardware is messing with the stream in some way. But if you don't have FiiO money, you could use a Roon ready streamer from the likes of Wim or Cambridge or iFi, or you could build your own Roon streamer around a Raspberry Pi, because the Rotel's USB input means you won't necessarily need a SPDIF hat. And I would like to thank Roon for sponsoring this video. Now I am glad I connected an external streamer to the back of the Rotel, because it told me that the coaxial input doesn't like anything higher than CD quality. I tried to play the Soft Boys' Underwater Moonlight in 2496 and was met with all kinds of audible distortion, and the display showed the Q5 failing to lock onto the signal. Now this is no issue for me, but it might be for high-res fans, possibly like you. Now moving the connection to USB sorted this issue completely. High-res played just fine. But I hope Rotel can sort out this issue with a firmware update. Talking of which, I bought the Q5 because of its TFT screen and its network connection, because together they do something clever. The Q5 pulls down artist, album and song information from the internet and displays it on the front panel. It does that once you've put the CD in, it's scanned the table of contents, it sends it out to the internet and pulls the information down. And this works every single time. But less successful is the cover art display, also pulled down from the internet based upon the CD inserted, obviously. Now some days it works for 3 discs out of every 10, and on other days I only get a 1 in 10 success rate. And it's also inconsistent on the same day. So I think one day last week I got cover art for the Chemical Brothers' Out of Control single the first time I loaded it, but then I played something else, then went back to that CD and the cover art didn't load that second time. Now Rotel is aware of this issue and has rolled out at least one firmware update since March. And I've been running firmware version 1.02 for a couple of months, and yeah, the issue still persists. Another firmware update was promised a month ago, but it still hasn't arrived. And I know it's not my internet connection, because the Cambridge Audio Evo CD has a 100% success rate with cover art, download and display. So the Q5's failure here isn't a deal breaker for me, because this CD player sounds absolutely bloody amazing, but it might be an issue for you. Anyway, that's all from me for today. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up below and consider subscribing to this channel. And also remember that I'm extremely active on Patreon, where you'll find plenty of behind the scenes coverage and music playlists for each video. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. Let's end this video with a few random thoughts. So if you're wondering why I or others still spin CDs, you got to remember we are not seeking your permission to do so. We do it because we enjoy owning and playing a physical format. And it's a physical format that's cheaper than vinyl and doesn't suffer from surface noise. Now, perhaps this is why CDs still outsell vinyl in most countries outside of the USA. CDs are durable, and in my collection, CD rot is a non-issue. It has affected, I think, maybe one disc out of well over 1,000 I've got in this room. And even that disc plays just fine. And also, CDs give us access to masters long since deleted from streaming, and many older versions feature bonus tracks not found on subsequent remasters. So for example, the 2001 remaster of the Soft Boys' Underwater Moonlight, done by Ryko, features around, I think, 25 bonus tracks that are not on the new 2025 remaster. And if you want to see more reasons why I still buy CDs, you can watch this video up here.